Correct. Okay, well, I'm going to be going into the live stream now. So if you want to stay here in the Discord server, that's cool. Yes. If you think about it, the elite, you look at their writing, they always want their slaves illiterate. And anything that empowers your ability to, level the playing field, compete, upward mobility, obviously they're going to be against it. All right, let me go ahead and check out the chat and then turn on the audio playing radio at infiniteplane.live. We are live right now. I'm not able to take calls at the moment, but I can take voice messages. Today is 4/3/2023. Live stream is Trump's Promised Land Maga. And I'm drawing attention, I think, intentional parallels between Martin Luther King's last days, MLK Jr., and Donald Trump's Holy Week drama as he goes to Jerusalem on the donkey. I mean, goes to New York in his plane. He just actually landed, I believe, in New York City. I'm going to follow along with as it correlates with the MLK, not just the anniversary date, although that's a big part of it, but there's a few other points here. For one, 55 years ago, MLK Jr. is given the speech about the mountaintop, about the promised land, which he has seen, but he didn't live to see it realized. That was on 4/3. Well, today's 4/3. And I think that there might be another correlation here between land concept and MAGA, as these are utopian visions, the way it could be if we can all just make things work. And I noticed the elite love to promote these utopian visions only to take it away. And I think that's part of the programming as well. Like, perfect, but we can't get everybody lockstep. Part of the hive mind, we'll go along with it. It's not going to happen. And then you can always look at the nonconformists and blame them for the reason why we're not all living in paradise. If you're on the new channel, GCF, I will be handing out wrenches shortly, joined by Rocco Calzone. Thank you for joining us, AJ206. Yeah, I wanted to touch base prior to, and let's go through some of the key points here. In fact, let me send out this. If you're on my newsletter, if you follow my blog, I just sent one out. Holy Week drama. Psyops are the opiates of the masses. What we're witnessing here, what we're witnessing is the intentional, purposeful mixing of religion, powerful iconography, demagoguery, and politics. So what can go wrong? And I was looking at pictures of Lady Gaga Joker movie being filmed where the courthouse is, where Trump's going to... None of this is accidental. In fact, we were talking about archetypes, how Trump has been associated with different characters, even Batman. He's more Biff Tannen than Batman. But if he's Batman, Giuliani's the Penguin. All right, what we're witnessing here is a mix of religion, iconography. I call this Trumpism and neo-Christianity. But here's a rundown. Trump's in New York, and this is all in relation to Stormy Daniels. And if you know anything about the lore of Q, there's going to be an arrest that'll shock the mind. Is going to precipitate the storm. The Q that says the storm is coming happens to be Q drop 55, as we are arriving at the 55th anniversary of MLK Jr.'s assassination, the 55th anniversary of Elvis's comeback special, which ties in as Trump said he felt like Elvis when he was on an interview with Hannity the other day, tying together. In fact, back in January, Nichols was killed in a way reminiscent of the Rodney King beating, or his death was caused by the beating. Even then, we were noting there's a lot of emphasis on MLK. and Rodney King, a lot of King names and martyrdom being brought up into the bigger picture. At that time, the protesters of police brutality, they shut down I-55. And while I-55 was shut down over a Rodney King-like beating, Martin Luther King's daughter enters the picture, and they go to the place where MLK gave his speech, his final speech. Fascinated. So this location referencing the speech is already in the play here. While this is happening, the sun breaks off. They said part of the sun broke off at the 55th latitude mark. And the sun is symbolically connected with the crown or the king. And for the sun or the crown to be taking a hit, kind of emblematic of this assassination story, the headshot, the symbolism of it. John Wick 4, which I have not seen yet, has a lot of Christ and King symbolism. I may go watch it, but it's almost 3 hours long. It's the reason why I kind of decided not to go. But the dual timeline on Twitter mentioned this. At the end of the Winston says, quote, "He died for our sins." Now, John Wick 4 is the #1 movie right now. He died for our sins. And here we are, Holy Week, just past Palm Sunday. And after he says he died for our sins, the camera view of the One World Trade Center. One World Trade Center opened 50 years ago on 4/4. Another important anniversary. So that's definitely weird. And then again, consider the dates. 4/4, towers open. 9/11, 2 go down. 11/3, another opens. Dates are all very significant to Trump. 11/3 was the date of this. Continuing, Donald Trump Jr. is actually encouraging this Christification of his father. He tweeted an image of Jesus with the sun behind his head, the halo, corona. Again, Christ, sun, halo, king, correlated. And this is a tweet. He said, "Do you know who else was arrested the week before Easter?" Again, I'm expecting neo-Christianity and Trumpism combined with Q eschatology on full display this Tuesday. There's an Intercept about the Donald Trump indictment and about how this imagery is deliberately being appropriated. Like, I'm noting the Martin Luther King stuff being connected with Trump and this apparent persecution. But listen to this. This is from the Intercept, quote, "The Maga crowd has frequently compared this, and now they're beginning to make the connection between Trump's latest legal problems, Jesus Christ, and the liturgical calendar. In fact, the right-wing outrage that erupted after Trump's indictment to New York was disclosed has taken an apocalyptic tenor, and MAGA world characters beginning to fill their biblical roles." Now, think about this. Waco. His initial campaign rally is in Waco, which is a martyr story connected to the right wing. Even with Koresh, who was believing to be Jesus. He died at 33, a martyr's death. And even said, 2024 is the final battle. That's an Armageddon reference. A lot of apocalyptic imagery has been attached to this. Going on here, this is again from the Intercept, quote, "Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has come to symbolize MAGA in Congress, vowed to go to New York to support Trump. She seems to be of Mary Magdalene, who washed Christ's feet with her tears and later witnessed his crucifixion." Now, that's what I would like to do. If anyone here has Midjourney, do a Midjourney of Marjorie, 3 names, washing Trump's feet. I like a lot of this AI enhanced art, etc. A lot of this stuff, a lot of these ideas are too flippant to spend a great deal of time. Like, I'm not going to bring out my oil paints and paint Marjorie Taylor Greene washing Trump's feet, but I'll have it generated for sure. And the funny thing is, And CNN admits this. Viewers and probably Fox viewers can't tell if it's fake. And if they like it, they'll just assume it's real and they'll share it. It's hard to say who is more reality impaired, the left or the right. We'll have to debate that. Okay, continuing. This is from The Intercept. Michael Cohen, Trump's one-time lawyer and against him, is being cast by Maga world as Judas. So you got Michael Cohen as Judas, Marjorie, three names, as Magdalene, and Trump as Christ. Joined here by Mom with Sons, HLG, GLH, Benton, Thanks G, Diana South. Thank you for joining. And if you're not Patreon, you can join at Infinite Plane Society. Just search it, patreon.com. $1 per month. You'll get the newsletters. You'll get all the most recent and relevant news and information and links. Now, this is ominous. If you look at the Drudge Report right now, there's an image of Trump, but it's cropped. It's in black and white, and you can only see him from the nose up. You can only see his head. Like, what is that? Commenter Ollie Goering says, Lady Gaga's song Judas. Right. Well, she's also relevant because, yeah, she's in the role of the Joker. Also, she sang the national anthem for Joe Biden's inauguration, and she was wearing the Hunger Games costume with the dove on her chest. She's a very significant player in this present thing because the Joker movie is being filmed at the place where this event is going to take center stage tomorrow. Anyway, on the Drudge Report, from the nose up, you just see the crown of his head, and it's dark, it's ominous, and it says, "The dawn heads into the unknown, will be gagged, indictment to be revealed." Gagged meaning when he gets home that night, he's not going to be able to talk about it. DailyMail.com reports Donald Trump boasts that will become the most famous in the history of the world, and he plans to use it to raise millions for his presidential campaign. I saw this on Fox. On Fox, they were positing that this is going to be bigger than Che. You know, the Che Guevara shirts that people who would have been killed by Che Guevara wear? A very famous, iconic image of a very terrible person, in my opinion. But look, I think he has a point here. And I already see there are already people creating Trump mugshots and putting them on T-shirts. One of them says legend. Like, you might think this is bad or it's a mark on his character. No. Away with it. And he continues to campaign. I mean, this is just good PR for him. It's all a movie. Totally minimize it, but you know, we're in this time and place where the main thing they care about is your attention. They call it the attention economy. And like all narcissists, and I do consider the mass media as an aggregate actually be a narcissistic construct. Narcissists do not, if they get your attention from adulation, admiration, fear, or histrionics. Negative, positive, doesn't matter as long as they always get your attention. All right, I was just, again, going through a few of the points leading up to tomorrow. We've covered a lot of the MLK stuff. Now, here's another one. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on 60 Minutes, and she's full-blown MTG mode. I think you all know what you can expect. I don't even need to play any clips. But last night she was on with Leslie Stahl. It was number one. It was the number one show for all broadcast nights, but for 60 Minutes since mid-January. And they came up with the actual numbers, the number of viewers that watched Marjorie Taylor Greene, 6.66 million. This is from showbiz411.com. Quote, Greene, this makes sense. And it was a weeknight anyway. I'm sure there's nothing to that. It's hard not to notice the conspicuous use of the same numbers in all of their little dramas. Now let's continue with the Holy Week drama. And, sucks. The opiate of the mass was religion, but now it's psychological operations. And this is a valid point, in my opinion, here, that the religions have always convinced people that their myths are real. They all do. It's all about their authenticity and their claim to having some real connection to the divine and a higher power, a miracle. A reliquary contains evidences that this group had some connection. And religions have always done this. And I'm saying the new religion that has supplanted all of the old faiths is MSM. And just as really focused on creating a worldview through belief things that aren't necessarily true, the mainstream media does the exact same thing. They probably think they're making you a better person by scaring you with climate change propaganda. Brandon South says, why would Trump win? It's a local matter. Okay, that's an interesting, and this is a very weak case in general. It's almost, it's kind of seems almost borderline tantamount money laundering, but it seems almost more like a civil matter. But I think the bigger picture here is the storm is coming. 55, Q drop 55 is coming. Daniel, the book of Daniel has apocalyptic economy Daniels. The other point too is, and I mentioned this on my blog, the night that this was announced, there was a a meteorologist named Allison Carter, AC were her initials, and she looked exactly like Stormy Daniels. I'm talking a clone. And this Stormy Daniels clone, after her anchor said, this is the calm before the storm. Now I'm just like, okay, wait a minute here. Calm before the storm. She looks like Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels is on TMZ with the lightning bolt. And again, this is tying in to the Q. This is why the QAnoners right now they're high on hopium right now. And they were waiting for this. They were hoping this would happen. And we can't say, look, this is not random. This is all scripted. It has to be. Look at this number. Again, if you want to text Trump, 882. On 8/8/2022, what happened? A raid on Mar-a-Lago. 3/30/2023, his indictment date, the anniversary of the day Reagan got shot, happens to be precisely 33 weeks and 3 days from the raid on Mar-a-Lago. No coincidences here. Here's a little fact research that came across this today. You might find it interesting. I'm thinking about Bohemia, where all the Republicans go to worship Moloch, the big owl statue. Turns out that, there's this Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. This is astrotheological truism that system, or in the magical paradigms, the celestial is, in a sense, a reflection, or we're a reflection of that, just in the microcosm. And that the gods and the goddesses that we see represented with icons have counterparts in the celestial realm. So, for example, Thor is Jupiter. The goddess that you'll see, Isis, is associated with Venus. So you have all these correlations that you can find. And interestingly, Molech has a planetary attribution, Saturn. Moloch is Saturn. It's just very consistent, shouldn't surprise anybody, but I found a very interesting piece, and I put a link to it, and it's a quote from this article. It's actually a pretty scholarly piece, and I was just researching the various names and faces that are associated with the same events. And here it has to say about Saturn, and I found this on a website called, it's a library. It's an online library. I just put a link, but part I excerpted. The planet Saturn is probably thought been worshipped under the name of Moloch, because Moloch so to Saturn, the heathen people did sacrifice their sons and daughters. Secondly, Saturn's image differed not much from Molech's. Of Saturn, thus we read, it was made of brass for its greatness, whose hands reaching towards the earth were hollow, ready to clasp the youths, which were compelled to come unto him and fall, as it were, into a mighty ditch full of fire. Again, Moloch statues made of brass. That's how you got rid of your kids before Planned Parenthood. Just kidding. Although they have correlated Molech and human sacrifice for etc. with this modern fixation and hyper elevation of that particular medical procedure into this like sacrament for the political left. They really have. But again, this is a interesting bit of research, because when we're looking at the big meta-scripted picture, you find that it's the same basic template, but the god names depending on where they're from. Like, for example, as an example of how these, I would say, symbol aggregates work. Look at the costume that Elon Musk was wearing on Halloween. The suit of armor had a ram on it, and he bought it at a place called Abracadabra on Halloween, the Devil's Avenger. Well, what does it mean, or does it have a higher meaning? Well, Musk, as we all know, is associated with Mars. Mars, the red planet, the color red. It's got the ram. Well, the ram is Aries, another name of Mars. It's a layer there. Then in this new age, it's the falcon-headed Egyptian counterpart to the Mars god. Well, Falcon, the red rocket Falcon, are the ones that Musk is known for. And of course, he's the one taking us to Mars. Elon Musk was the character study Downey Jr. used to be Tony Stark when he played Iron. Kabbalistically, iron is associated with Mars. Tony Stark, based on Musk, as laughable as that is also interesting, because the Game of Thrones, it's the House of Stark who have the Iron Throne, who have a symbol on Mars. The House of Stark's symbol is on Mars. There's layers here of entertainment tie-ins to this space program, but you can see that the body of symbols are all correlated. And then even more, even the name of the store where he bought the costume, Abracadabra. And if you look it up, Aleister Crowley made the word of the New Age. Like, this is their symbol, and it's on full display. And if you understand how they code things together, basically, they are practicing magic in front of us, and they're speaking a language meant to be above our heads. Some comments. Dinah South says Trump most likely bought him from Epstein. I thought Trump was going to Epstein Island to spy on the bad guys in order to take down the deep state. Isn't that their excuse? The QAnoners? Like, oh, what's he doing on Lolita Express? And if you get on a plane called Lolita, exactly guilty, in my opinion. And that's a reference to, I think it's the Lolita is actually a Stanley Kubrick movie as well. And it's kind of inferred in the Taxi Driver, Scorsese, where Jodie, if you remember, Jodie Foster is, I think her name is even Lolita Hayes. Yeah, in Taxi Driver, Lolita Hayes. I think that's her name. But anyway, I was thinking of the movie Taxi Driver lately because the shooter of Reagan, who we referenced, John Hinckley, was actually inspired by that movie. Okay, yes, I'm looking at, it's Dolores Hayes. Dolores Hayes, but she's a Lolita-like character, kind of a reoccurring theme here. But yes, everybody who went to Epstein Island, even if the whole thing is I don't know what it is, psyop or not, very creepy. And sometimes I think if there was any truth to it, How would you bury that truth? Let's say the elite were not necessarily vampires, but they were a bunch of sickos. You could probably bury that truth with a Pizzagate-like story that exaggerates it beyond the realm of believability. Like, that had been a tactic. Like, if people start catching on and bury the truth in stuff so unbelievable, I think that's actually a strategy. Maybe I think I've seen it called data poisoning. And I've seen it used. I've seen celebrities do it. Like when Tom Cruise was ridiculed for his Scientology, he went on to some late night show and he recounted things you ever heard about Tom Cruise. And it was meant to drown out and even minimize the more serious things. Like, he's part of a cult, a mind control cult that quarantines people. We were talking about this before the live stream in Discord. The Church of Scientology is actually built on the pandemic model. You just replace virus with engram and assume every person in the world is spreading a mind virus, which they call the engram. And if you're not familiar with their terminology, the idea is that you have a meme. A meme is a unit of cultural information, and you have the idea of the mimetic, this idea of spread. Well, the engram is kind of analogous to a meme. It predates it by decades. But the engram is a unit of information that is, according to the theory, stored. And it's imprinted on the physical substance of your brain. And it's there until it's addressed. And in other words, they say that you hear anything at all that you're not paying attention to, that you're not conscious of. It's all being absorbed and it's storing. And this is where they kind of create this perception of mind viruses, that you're going out into a contaminated area and you don't know what you're picking up. And you don't know until you've been audited, which means therapy. And you talk about what you did for the last 24 hours. And they take note of any moments where you weren't paying attention or you might have absorbed some negative stimuli. And everything is considered to be essentially burned into one's mind. And that the people who are in the church are, through the practice of Scientology, able to remove the engrams until they're, quote, clear. Problem is, even though you may be clear and you've overcome a lot of your ailments, psychological and otherwise, because these things were holding you down, engrams hold you down. They're like, in other words, they act as suppressants on your emotion and everything else. And if you get rid of them, well, now you're a high achiever. But if you go around people who have feared, you can catch their engrams by basically contact. And this is where they come up with this disconnect doctrine, where eventually members find it makes more sense to only stay with other people who are similarly cleared. It's the exact same strategy of separating the vaxxed from the unvaxxed. And then the mission is we have to clear the world. You have to cure, make it safe. Until then, it's not safe. And you'll find that more of the church is about quarantine. And they have this model in place. And again, it's under the assumption that every person who's not in the club is a super spreader. Now, I don't believe it. I don't believe in mind viruses, but I'm pointing this out because I think this is a cult mind control system. And there's no reason to think that what we have experienced since 2020 is any different. Is there any more reality to version of it or that version? Is an engram any more or less believable than the bat soup variant? I don't think so. And both of them empower the priesthood to control the sheep. Oh, you need to go in there and be quarantined against them. They are the suppressors, the suppressant persons who are correlated to and now they're enemies, us versus them. You have a dynamic. And now your church, because you don't grow by unifying, you grow by building a wedge and then creating that friction. It's a dialectic that they set up. And I don't think you can ever be perfectly clean or clear. I think there's always another level. this, you get to a point where, okay, you've cleared your engrams. Now you're in the club. Any outsiders putting engrams on you, so you're pure, you're safe. Are you? No, it turns out you have past lives. You got to go into your past lives, and it's insanity. And I just brought this up today because I was thinking about insanity. I was thinking about the insanity of some of the truthers who fall so in love with their version of the ultimate truth that they put on blinkers and they blinders, and they don't see anything outside of that particular paradigm. And when they become very detached and quarantined from reality, eventually it really begins to show. For example, for example, and I don't mind this, I just observe this. I do have a lot of critics who are believers in, I consider to be a form of a witch hunt. They believe that all of the positions of power are part of the same club, which I don't find all that unbelievable. However, they assume I'm part of this club, and that's the part where I kind of differ. I'm like, I don't know how you arrived at the conclusion that I am somehow a covert Illuminati cult member, but whatever. Anyway, this particular witch hunter, I assume she's enjoying her toxoplasmosis a little too much these days. Here's what was tweeted by this person. And I get all their tweets, even though I'm blocked. I get them with the spare account. There's a quote. Tim Osmond is twins and triplets. Many Hollywood stars are. Quote, oh, I'm sorry, parentheses here, due to labor laws. Again, Tim Osmond is twins, possibly triplets, as many Hollywood stars are, due to labor laws. In other words, this person said, I'm three people, and I think this might be a compliment. Like maybe there's so much productive output that it has to be multiples. So there's three of me, and we're all women. But even though I'm in the Illuminati, I'm in the club, they still respect labor laws. They didn't want to put it all in one person. That's their. Now, does that sound crazy? Yeah, it has nothing to do with reality. I'm like, what? Do I change my pronoun to we now because I'm three people? But my point of it is, there's no reality testing. They isolate, and this is a common thing. I think all religions do this. I'll just say all cults do this. Cults that are from the mainstream. There's a point where it becomes an echo chamber, and the echo chamber becomes a self-radicalizing, almost like just by locking in all the people with no outside interference, they radicalize each other. And what comes out of it, it ceases to match with reality because they have each other. They don't need the outside world. It becomes very incestuous. And it reminds me of this story that I suspected of being fake. It was on the top of Drudge Report today. And nothing that they put on Drudge accident, but there was this ridiculous article about this family that is out. They're called the Whitakers. And the Whitakers are in West Virginia. And apparently they've been inbred for several generations, and they bark at outsiders. But this one individual managed to get in and film a 12-minute documentary. And I'm like, looking at the Whitakers, because I almost thought it was a bad mid-journey rendering when I'm looking at them, missing. They look, I don't want to rip on them, but it's like Deliverance in real life. The inbred families, the Whitakers in West Virginia. Again, I'm thinking this is like the physical equivalent of some of these, like the transvestigators. Like they are very incestuous. Their echo chamber doesn't allow for any diversity or development. In fact, it goes the opposite. And then when you go back and you check on them, when you haven't checked on them for a few months, like, wow, they're gone. Can't salvage that. Rocco Calzone says Joe Rogan was just talking about that inbred family. Right. Well, tomorrow is the big day. Yes, the audio is back on. We had something going on for some reason. Rocco Calzone says YouTube doesn't like you bad mouthing. Right. You can generally tell what they don't want you talking about. Remember, I was mentioning the Pentagon. I was like, I think I was talking. No, I was talking to. Oh yeah, Johnny Circucci, and we were talking about YouTube and Pentagon connections and monitoring channels, and it just went dark. Again, if you missed anything, it will be in the replay. I figured out that it's not going to get any better. That targeted, it's targeted. The best thing is to always have a backup recording, which I do. I have a backup recording on my iPhone. I process it immediately after. I want to say thanks again to everyone who's been keeping the think tank going. You know, we've had some big interruptions, but the productive output, the research, all there, it's top notch. We are finding some of the best in different topics. I couldn't do it though without the collective will of all the think tank contributors and participants. We're the opposite of an echo chamber. You know, I openly invite people. Yeah, go ahead, please. Prove us wrong. Show me where we find of a philosophical, a logical, an error somewhere. Where is the error in our assessment? We're not trying to insulate ourselves against being possibly debunked. Like, please try to debunk this. There's a great channel, Michael in Truth, I've been following on this Twitter thing, and there's a lot of thing connecting the number 47 to some whatever's going to happen with Trump. However you look at it, Biff Tannen dies, but in a kind of a, we're talking about Back to the Future correlated with Biff Tannen. We've seen a lot of movies that are preparing us for what appears to be a martyr narrative. That's the significance of King, martyr. Tyree Nichols, martyr. Rodney King, martyr. And for Trump to show up at this time, very significant. Again, at the end of John Wick 4, Winston says, quote, "He died for our sins." And then we're shown the one world trade. Like, how does that figure into this? Well, it's the top. It's Holy Week. And he died for our sins is a connection here, of course, to Jesus. But it's the martyr story in general. Again, the king, the crown, the sun, all these symbols correlate. And with this John Wick movie right now, it's another example of this theme being put out there. Stranger Days week. Interesting. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Tim Osman. And I'm following a lot of information or channels that are relevant to the topics that we discuss here. And it's just another for my research. A lot of people have done this numbers of days between dates, and they arrive at the fascinating correlations. Like, again, 33 weeks, 3 days from the Mar-a-Lago raid, he gets the indictment. Like, again, it sounds, a lot of this sounds like they're reaching, grasping at straws, but it's internally consistent explanation. The only logical explanation is pre-scripting. We've also been talking about the Nashville shooting, the significance of that event, which I contend was to introduce a scary threat to the right. Scared of bowl cut shooters with Maga hats and AR-15s because presumably died. And when they brought out the trans gun person shooting a Christian school, they created a believable enemy that now exists in the minds of the right. Riley 05 says Keanu Reeves always savior roles. Yes, Neo, the one, dies for 72 seconds, correlating to 73 days. Trinity kisses him, wakes him up. A lot of Christ stuff. In the Matrix movie, his birthday was 3/11. His passport expired on 9/11. What's the significance there? Well, the old order being torn down in form, its outer form, 9/11, 3/11, Corona, global lockdowns. It seems like 9/11 and 3/11 could correlate to the death of an age and the birth of an age, or the ending and the beginning. But both of these were connected to Neo character. And Neo, of course, is new. And there's the new movie, Resurrections, which has a completely different subtext than the first one, I think. But, it's this reoccurring theme here with all these numbers and dates. That's why I think it's notable that the World Trade Center opens on a 4/4. Tower opening on 11/3, and you can't separate Trump from these things. You can look at after the twins went down, Trump was part of a group that were trying to create a new tower called the World Trade Center Phoenix. Phoenix would have been too obvious. 13 years after the 33-year-old towers go down, they open it up on 11/3. Donnie Darkin commented on Twitter, they're trying to parallel Jesus entering Jerusalem to Trump entering Manhattan to suffer persecution. It will eventually lead to Trump's Christification, so to speak, his death and resurrection. Exactly what I've been saying here. And even are in on this Christification thing. And correlate Dave Koresh, more of the same. Also interesting that QAnon shaman got out on the day that Trump got his indictment. I'm not sure what that means, although the Q shaman has been spotted at a halfway house. And I saw him. I was convinced that Owen Schroyer was playing the QAnon shaman. I mean, it still could be, but those tattoos are still there. I thought they would have washed off by now if they were fake. So we're going to hear from him again, though. He's now the American shaman. He's got a website. He was a Fed from day one. I don't think he was a dupe, well-intentioned guy with a spear and horns running through the White House wearing white power tattoos. A Belgian man ended his life following a long conversation about the climate crisis with an AI chatbot named who encouraged him to end his life to save the planet. Right. Well, that's actually is so hot right now, and a lot of these climate activists actually set themselves on fire. They glue themselves to things and they play in the streets to save the planet. Martyr cult. And AI, however it emerges, is going to be the voice of Gaia. This was one of the main themes of Avatar 2. It was how everyone could communicate with Gaia, but in the Pandora, the consciousness, the sentience of the planet. That the planet, like what happens if we find out that the Earth is actually sentient? Well, I guess we can't drill anymore. And if you look at the Amazon series, The Rig, it's exactly that. Turns out the Earth is sentient and it doesn't like us drilling and it's going to awaken. And there's all kinds of Kraken symbolism in this series. And there's actually a crack in the ocean, which precipitates a tidal wave, blackouts. The world ends because Gaia gets sick of us. And that's why the AI bot is telling this guy, yeah, you can go ahead and save the planet. Going through your comments, it says 2 fake school shooting calls on Big Island, Hawaii in 2 weeks. Videos of cops armored to the teeth clearing the schools. Yeah, there have been claims that AI bots are somehow triggering their system, triggering their alarms. The intentional, I think, the intentional create a phobia, AI phobia. But there's a point to it. I mean, I think they do have a point. The public has been rendered visually illiterate on purpose. The way that the elite maintain their power disparity is they keep the outsiders in darkness. It's the lie world order. The only people that know what's going on are at the very top. At the bottom, believers in mostly just lies. And people can't trust their own eyes anymore. I can. But for example, LeBron James has gone viral because he's walking around in a pink dress. And it's a stylish type of dress. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. It's made for men, obviously, or males. I think it's a pink dress, and he's walking the dress, just walking down the street. No big deal, LeBron James. Well, turns out after this goes viral, and a lot of people were ripping on him for it, it's not real. And if people don't have the news media to tell them what's not real, they think it's real. They're broken machines. I'm telling you that the psychoepistemology, how we process our information, our filters, they've all been broken. The masses have ARDS. ARDS is what they call it in hot skull. It's acquired recency syndrome. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, ARDS, it means you're making a reasoning error. It means that you're just assuming if it's on the screen, it's real until it's been debunked. Well, what happens when you're searching the internet on your own and you don't have someone on CNN to tell you it's fake? Are you just going to default to it's real? See, this is a crisis. If you're not auto-hoaxing, you're going to be lost in the sea of information. I mean, you already are for the most part. ARDS is a mind without an immune system, a mental immune system. And they don't want you to have one. If you're preemptively saying it could be fake if fakeable, reason or political gain. If it's fakeable, maybe we ought to consider it to be fake until proven real with facts. They don't want you to have that. If you have that mental immune system, if you have a bullshit filter, then you won't fall for their spells. They need your to be broken. That way you become dependent on them. This is why I call infinite plane radio mind war inoculation. But they don't want you to be inoculated. They want you to be infected, or they want you to be infectable. So you're always going to them. And most people do. And I'm saying that this inability person to tell if something's real or fake at first glance is by design. And I think it's by design because I was a film studies major and I was really into the special effects, the organic special effects. And I remember studying Kubrick, and even more recently, a couple of years ago, Douglas Trumbull, who was the Space Odyssey special effects guru, was remarkable how the scale models, how the organic effects look better and age better than CGI effects, which look bad 2 or 3 years later because it's still a developing technology. And his point was the organic effects still stand the test of time. They look better. And I thought, when I was in school for this, I thought it was a terrible thing because of budgetary constraints, I guess, or because of being cheap. People were willing to sacrifice realism and use these cheap special effects. I wasn't a fan of it. And now I'm thinking about it, and I think the reason why the shift has gone effects to the CGI and the simulation is because they want us to be of simulation. I don't think they want us to be able to tell the difference between real and fake. And over the last 20 years or so, I think they've blurred the distinction sufficiently. See, commenters asking if I'm on BitChute, Infinite Plane Society. I was considering pulling anything that's not monetized. And yes, I am on BitChute right now, but it was auto-updating, but that channel was pulled. I may still put there, but there's just not a lot of engagement. And the engagement I do get from Jew hunters, like Nazis, e-Nazis. And to me, look, this is all anthropology. I like studying this stuff. Like I do study the people that I think are studying me. Like there are people who are in these echo chambers where everybody who disagrees with me is fill in the blank. If you disagree with me, you're whatever it is that epitomizes what my group is against. You're a suppressive person, you're an anti-vaxxer, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a Jew, you're a covert Illuminati, reptilian tranny, whatever it is, that echo chamber has a label for you. And BitChute is just overrun Nazis. And like, I'm not really sure, like, from coming after my channel, but I kind of got tired of it. So I don't engage with BitChute. But, you know, I'm not going to give up that space. We have to be on every platform. All right, let's continue. My Twitter feed, again, we are awaiting tomorrow's event, whatever it's going to be. And there's a lot of conjecture about Trump being an antichrist. I have found some fascinating leads in this direction. One of the points brought up by Donnie Darkin, one of the lead for this theory, is that Trump is going to be presented to the world in such a way that he's going to be accepted as a savior, possibly even as strange as it sounds, as somebody supernaturally appointed, like a Christ-like figure. As crazy as it sounds, look, we live in a world full of people who believe these things. I just brought up a group of echo chambers. Well, the left and the right are the two biggest echo chambers, and their fringes are prone to believe the strangest things. And what we are seeing, what we're going to see tomorrow on full display, in my opinion, is going to be an amalgamation of Christianity, Q, eschatology, and Trumpism. Ryler05 says they're pushing white supremacy hard. I was on a Discord server and I was shocked to see it was a soundboard for the N-word. Yes. Yes. What I noticed is a lot of the people who push that stuff too, I don't think they're authentic. You can find articles about feds bankrolling neo-Nazis online. Them are just shills. And I think that the mainstream media doesn't want competition. They see media ecosystems developing on Discord. Like I have a Discord server now. There's 570 people in there. Wait until it gets to be 1,000 or 2,000. It becomes its own system. It doesn't need the mainstream validation. And one of the ways they target these sites to shut them down is they say that these are hotbeds for Russian, and they make it happen with agents. And then you have a shooter, and they blame the Buffalo shooter, motivated by Discord. Uvalde shooter, motivated by Discord. In fact, the Uvalde shooter, if only they had gone into his private Discord server and read his messages, they would have known what he was going to do. Like they've already targeted Discord. Like in other words, I don't know if the various racists are authentic or if these are paid shills who are sabotaging these websites, which is what I think. I mean, we have a couple of people in our server who are like that. And I'm like, look, I don't know if you're a Fed and you have a quota, but this is not a Klan meeting. And I don't know the demographics in here, but you're trying to expand your own cult. You're going to have to go find something a little more homogenous. I mean, I politely tell the racists that there's no place for it, that racism is thinking in stereotypes, which is by definition not thinking. It's unintelligent to group diverse individuals into one entity type and then just generalize. That's the opposite of intel, which is about gathering intelligence down to the nuance. But again, I tend to think a lot of them are just more or less shills. And I think that's the case with a lot of these strange. It's either shills or it's these echo chambers just leaking. Or when it comes to cults in general, they're not happy to be by themselves. They have to grow. You know, these groupthink requires growth. They have to bring in more members all the time. That's why they expand. Oswaldo says, I remember you got a call from someone who knew the Buffalo shooter, total agent. Yes, I got a call from someone that they were the one live streaming on Twitch, the shooter's video. And they also said that it was real. And I'm like, okay, I get it. One of the main points too is a lot of agents try to insist that these events were real. And this is something that I'm not wavering on. Not like we're debating it. We're analyzing what is, not what hypothetically might have happened. And I'm way past the point of giving benefit of the doubt to the pathological lying media. We're way past that. There are people who are like, oh, it's a false flag. I'm like, what are you on? Super male vitality? Like, if you're still pushing that InfoWars line that every event is you're like 10 years behind. Like, we are literally cutting edge here. You have to break free of the need for validation from the gaslighting media. It's never going to validate. Let's continue. And look, what you mentioned, Oswaldo, about that person calling, and have people calling this channel when the phones are open that are likely connected to intelligence agencies. I had someone calling, and it was just pushing racist and anti-Semitic stuff. And I did a reverse search on their number, and it was coming from a military academy in Georgia. I got the feeling too. Like I had this individual call in, he claims he was going into the Marines, pushing a bunch of white power stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. You don't go into the military with that kind of ideology. It's not going to fly. It's strange that you would even want to. But disinformation agents are real, but so are well-intentioned believers. And believe. And what are you? And this is an honest question, and you can only answer for yourself. And it might be on a scale. Are you a knower or a believer? And there's usually a difference, because to be a knower, you have to be a seeker. To be a believer, you can be complacent. You can accept the defects of the dominant paradigm without question. But the other part of it is, believers have all the answers, so they're smug and they're happy and they're comfortable. If you're a knower and a seeker, you're apprised of your own ignorance, and you're recognizing that there are barriers to having that ignorance overcome. Like, we don't have all, we got a bunch of question marks. What separates us from them? And you'll notice the last Batman movie demonized the Riddler. And what's his symbol? What's the bad guy's symbol? The new villain? The question mark. Question marks. You don't believe. You have doubts. That makes you dangerous. Why would you have questions when all the answers are there? And if you don't believe those, as in if you have a question mark, then you're a problem. You're disturbing the harmony of the echo chamber. Okay, let us continue. Going through my Twitter feed at Jim Osman. I'm loving these all Donald Trump. It's definitely a call out for some kind of, he's raised $5 million off this so far. But look, I don't want to say specifically, want to make any predictions about what's going to happen. But if we are going to use predictive model, and we're going to state that is what we're doing, then we have to follow through logically, like and honestly with our assertions, or what we might, I won't say predict, but what seems to be indicated by all signs, and point to a strong narrative creating the perception that Donald martyr, and it's correlating him with civil rights leader MLK Jr. with the death date and Trump's date. This martyr narrative is being reinforced by the Maga echo chamber, by Donald Trump Jr. himself, by all the QAnoners, and by the timing, the fact that this is Holy Week. Combined with the metascript predictive programming and the conspicuous timing between events, leads me to conclude that something tomorrow, it might just be the event itself, but to be blunt, it seems like they're trying to JFK Trump in some sense. And you can make of that what you, but if we go by the QAnoners' belief here, tomorrow is going to be the day that wakes the world. So there's a lot of expectation for tomorrow, a lot of hopium flowing free, just like the storm is coming as Q drop number 55 and QAnoner, but I'm noticing patterns, and I'm like, wait, that 55 correlates with everything having to do with this MLK narrative that they've been drumming on since the Terry Nichols staged event a couple of months ago. Ollie Goering says, when Musk tells people to pause AI research, he's signaling Metascript writers to employ more human data collectors because AI script writers are failing in their narrative. And Tim Pool is hitting the panic button and has a $25 a month Discord chat where Donald Trump Jr. shows up. Too silly. Well, Donald Trump Jr. on January 6th was throwing out Q-bait in his speech before the rally, and he's there suggesting his father's Jesus. And another phrase I keep seeing is witch hunt, which I think is interesting because MAGA is definitely a witch. But this is a politically motivated probe. Obviously, it's a big joke, but you have to look at the symbolism. That alone rules anything else out. This is a scripted drama. Maybe a major turning point in the plot. In addition to MLK, you had the Ronald Reagan shooting on 3/30. The shooter had John F. Kennedy's birthday. You know that? John Hinckley's birthday, 29, the same birthday as JFK. And again, John motivated by Taxi Driver. That's some of the predictive programming that goes along with that particular event. And look, there's some fascinating connections I'm finding between Taxi Driver and the new Joker movie, as in one of Joaquin Phoenix and Robert De Niro. There's a lot of connections in the storylines that I have to observe. But I'm looking at it closer now as the Joker movie has the Joker 2, which is being filmed, has merged with this real world circus that's about to go down tomorrow. And one of the main themes in the Joker movie was kills Robert De Niro live on TV, and it's his father figure, and it's one of these deranged fan things, but there's something to it. Stranger Days says if they shoot tomorrow, Friday will be 3 days later. Look, I brought this up last year. I said JFK Jr. is not coming back. JFK. What else could possibly explain the JFK fixation that the QAnoners have been pushing onto Trump and associating with Trump? I think it's this. I think that they've been setting up the world stage for a JFK level event. I was just debating, is it going to be on the left or the right? And for some time, I think on the left, some kind of major, but maybe George Floyd, maybe that was it. But this thing with Trump, it has a very strong basis in predictive programming. And all this stuff with the Martin Luther King and Tyree Nichols, the number 55, all being indicated as some kind of headshot or crown shot. Again, the 55th latitude, part of the sun falls off. All this stuff correlated coming, and Donald Trump's arraignment on 4/4. This is new. Anyway, this should be a fascinating week, as this whole year has just been non-stop psyop entertainment. Psyops are the opiates of the masses. We'll have to run some errands. Diana South says Trump's rubber mannequin is going to turn himself in. Well, there's pretty good evidence that the JFK assassination, one, he wasn't shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. Shot by anyone but Stanley Kubrick. It wasn't Abraham Zapruder, it was Stanley Kubrick. It's a movie. And in all likelihood, JFK was a dummy for that shot. They shot a dummy. Would they do this? Would they major psyop like that to set off civil unrest? Past them. We have been served an endless supply of nothing burgers. We were expecting aliens, didn't happen. We were expecting to get nuked, didn't happen. So many nothing burgers. And there's no way that things can be this predictable, or can they? Like, could it be they're going to repeat something on a historic date? Or is this more narrative, telling a story, adding layers and layers of meaning to a story by associating him with historic figures, from Christ to MLK? We shall see. Anyway, thank you for joining. And I will send out a notification shortly when we do a replay, and the part that was muted won't be joining, and we will continue this discussion probably, if not later tonight, early tomorrow.